Well, hello everyone. This is Mike Holmes, or AKA Harry Ramsbottom, here at Street Fight Politics. Tonight we've got a special guest, Louie Lujon. And before we get started with him, let me just say that really what I want to lead off with tonight is Trump's visit to Arlington Cemetery. And when I say visit, I mean an appropriation, the kind of which we really don't see. When you see politicians at Arlington in the past, it's a very staged event. It's very much they're invited to lay a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknowns, usually. In this case, Trump was invited by families, not all the families, but a family or two of some troops that were killed during the withdrawal from Afghanistan, which would have been fine, if he'd gone there and obeyed the rules being you don't film, you don't take pictures and use them for political purposes. It's a private affair, as it should be, a dignified affair. Instead, his team showed up in force and made a bit of a display. And then when the Arlington staff said you can't do this and you need to stop filming, they pushed the person aside and did it anyway. And now we have pictures of Trump, thumbs up at the gravesite. I mean, how tacky can you be? And the question is, what are veterans going to do about this? I'm a veteran. Most of you know this. How are we going to? How long are we going to continue to tolerate this kind of nonsense? How long are we going to allow our cemeteries and our dead soldiers to be used as political props? It's tacky, and quite frankly, it's an insult to the memories of all of our soldiers, alive or dead, all of our veterans. But of course, if you're Donald Trump, we're just suckers and losers. So maybe that's it. Well, will it cause a shift? Will it cause a graveyard shift? Who knows? At this point, I don't put anything past the Trumpistas to carry on and do what they do. We all know it's going to be a very close election. You can see the polls, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But there we are. So that's the big question. What's going to happen? How are people responding to this latest outrage? Or will they even respond at all? So having said that, Louie, nice to have you on board, sir. I have to tell you, all I know is that Ed said I'm going to ask Louie to be our guest today. So I'm going to, that's the intro. That's all I've got. And Ed may be online later. He's at another undisclosed medical location until further notice. So Louie, introduce yourself and tell us what's going on.
Well, sure. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. And if Ed said that, then we're all good because he knows best. So I think, I'll start with this, though. I'll just give you a brief background on myself. So I'm the CEO and founder of Summit Government Affairs. We are a government affairs firm based out of Phoenix, Arizona. Now, it's my own firm. We represent clients in various industries, real estate, technology, so forth and so on. But my point is not that. My point is that I've been in politics, going back to 1997, 1998, when I first got involved right out of college. And I was a physics and astronomy major at USC, but quickly realized that I didn't want to really do physics and astronomy my whole life. I wanted to do something that was a bit more impactful in people's lives. So I, went into political science, got an internship, decided to run for office. I spent 10 years as a mayor of a local city in Southern California, and have been in politics ever since. And I've always had an interesting perspective on all of this stuff because I have a lot of contacts that are, behind the scenes contacts in politics, federal, state, and local, as well as just kind of a different kind of a pulse, an ear to the ground, if you will. So, my perspectives are a little bit different in that sense because I've been involved in politics. I know what it's about. And I know at the end of the day, what it comes down to is just getting your people out to vote. That's what we're seeing on a federal level with regard to the election that's coming up. So that's a bit of a background, who I am, where I've been, and I'm just happy to be here and talk about what we got to talk about today. So.
Well, you're talking to another political geek. I don't have nearly the depth of experience. Certainly, I was never elected to office, but I did run for office back in 2016 for the Arizona legislature. So
Sure.
yeah, and back in that day, LD 14, if you remember, was all of Southeast Arizona, to include basically every cowboy town that Marty
Oh
Robbins
yeah.
ever sung about.
Oh
So,
yeah.
as a Democrat, my career was short and glorious.
Which is
In the
the best way to do it.
but I at least have seen the elephant. So let me ask you. Okay, so you are located in the Phoenix area now, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and your practice. What do you primarily do? For your clients, what services are you providing to them?
Right. Yeah. Half the time I don't even know what I do, but no, in all seriousness, what we do is we provide essentially at the core, at the end of the day, what we provide is access to elected officials.
Got it.
I mean, there's a lot of detail to that, but essentially
Sure.
all of our clients want one essential thing. They want to be able to explain their issue, their cause, their business, whatever it may be, to an elected official. It could be a senator, it could be a mayor, it could be a congressperson. And through the relationships that we have built over the years, we show them how to do it and provide them that access.
Now, not to use any pejorative or try to infer any pejorative, but basically, you've just described a lobbyist. Is that correct?
That's correct. That is
Okay.
correct. Yeah. Now,
and go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, when you use the word lobbyist, people think all this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But in reality, what a lobbyist is, it's a person that has relationships built up over the years that provides access to those people. Because as you well know, you can't just pick up the phone and talk to the mayor of a city, or you can't just pick up the phone and speak to a congressman or a senator. It just doesn't work like that. So
Right.
what we do in the world of lobbying is ethically provide access to these individuals.
No, I completely understand that, and I was going to just, before you even said it, reinforce that point.
Right.
That lobbying is not a dirty word, and it's certainly not a bad thing. And to be quite honest, legislation would, or at least good legislation, probably would not happen without it. Now,
right.
Sometimes bad legislation happens with it, but that's the nature of a democracy. But yeah, I mean, so how did you get into that? Obviously, you were a mayor for 10 years. Yeah. Tell us about that story.
Yeah. So, one of the things about being a lobbyist or a government affairs, owner of a government affairs firm now is that I've actually been on the other side. I've been lobbied. So I understand what it takes to, gain access to an elected official, number one.
Yeah.
But, where I started was pretty simple. I mean, I grew up in a fairly, I always jokingly say a very kind of a vanilla-ish background in a city called West Covina, California. It was the suburbs of LA County at the time. It's grown since. But grew up in a very, very standard kind of an upbringing. I played baseball after school, went to West Covina High School, eventually went to USC, got my education, and found myself in a position where I was able to work for a congressman's office. Mm-hmm. And it was at that time when I realized, and this may sound a bit strange to some people, but I share my story openly. I didn't necessarily have a passion for what I was doing in government. I just felt I found that I was very good at it.
Yeah.
That's a whole other topic, but I found that I was very good at navigating government, and I was very good at playing the game of politics, if you will, or being in government. So I said, I'm going to try this, and I did it. And I it sounds funny. I didn't have a passion for it, but what I mean is this: when I got elected, I quickly realized that half of what elected officials do is being able to adapt to situations. Some people may call it acting, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. But the ability that you have to adapt to a situation or act, whatever, makes you a better elected official, because every situation you face, hour to hour, literally event to event, changes. The audience is different. The people you have to meet are different. The issues are different. And you have to be able to adapt to each situation and find solutions to those situations, because you're serving the public. And I was good at that. So I did that. I did it for 11 years. And I decided at one point that this is getting pretty dirty. I want to be able to take my connections, my contacts, my knowledge, and start a business. and that's what
Gotcha.
I did.
When
That's how
you
I
say
got where
getting
I am.
pretty dirty, I mean, describe that. And again, I'm not trying to throw
Well,
rocks at you or bring up
no,
anything that's ugly.
no. It's what I mean is this: is that in politics, you quickly find that everything and everyone around you is fair game.
Yeah,
That includes family, it includes friends, it includes issues, things you said, sometimes things you never said, but they make up. Um, every day in politics is the realization that there's a bullseye on your back.
yeah,
50% of the people you like and 50% don't like you.
yeah,
It's just the reality. I mean, it is what it is,
yeah.
But here's the thing. I tell people, it's not just in politics. It's pretty much every day you go to your job too, right? I mean, there's office politics. It's just magnified in elected office.
That magnified and seems to be sped up.
That's right.
As well. Like as soon as you go, public with your running for office or whatever happens, as soon as it's public knowledge, the knives are out.
Oh my God! Yeah. The knives, the rocks, the guns, I mean, whatever you want.
Yeah.
every day, and I don't miss that part of it at all because it was dirty and it got very close to my family.
Sure.
And so forth. That's a whole other topic again, but that's what I mean by dirty. It does not stop at the issues. It gets personal.
Just to ask, since you're there in the Phoenix, Arizona political ecosystem, do you know Stan Barnes?
I do. I know Stan. Yep. And I know a couple of people that are very involved here. Some people have even come from Southern California like myself, but to your question, yes.
It strikes me. I knew Stan for a bit back about 10 years ago when I was in the Flynn Brown program, and he's a mentor there, or at least was at the time. Really entertaining, interesting guy. But your story kind of reminds me of him. Sure. He did his time in the legislature, and then after a while said, you know what, there's a better way to make a living.
That's right. Some people. I was having this conversation the other day in an Uber, by the way. The Uber driver asked me what it was. I always get the question, what was it like to be a mayor? What is it like? And I tell them this, it's imagine yourself not being able to leave the house and somebody not know who you are. Imagine for a second, try to understand what it's like to go to the store and somebody recognize you. You're like a mini celebrity in that sense. And it's not, I don't mean it in a good way. I mean it in a way where you can't just throw on any random clothes and leave the house. You can't just be yourself. You always got to smile. It's a very, psychologically speaking, it's a very difficult thing to adapt to. So
you can't have a bad day.
For everybody.
You can't be grumpy. You can't have a bad moment with the cashier at McDonald's.
No, of course not. And especially in today's world of social media, you can't even be too happy. I mean, it's weird, but that's the whole personal side of being elected. I mean, the other side of governing and all that is different, but the personal toll that it takes is not for everybody. It's an extremely difficult thing to do.
So I'm really asking you personal questions here, and please tell me if I'm perfectly happy to hear no.
It's okay.
Move on. Yes. But it was part of your rationale for moving from Southern California to Phoenix to get away from some of that after you left.
No, that had nothing to do with it. I tell people, I say, there's, sometimes in most cases, and I jokingly say there's really one or two reasons why you moved to Phoenix from California, besides the cost of living. It's either a woman or a job. And in my case, it was both.
Okay.
No, but to your question, I'm joking, but to your question, there's some truth to that. But to your question, it wasn't really to get away. A lot of it in me was all my contacts and connections and family are in Southern California. I found that in Phoenix, in Arizona specifically, it's just ripe for change. It's an area that needs people that really want to make a difference in politics. Yeah. And that's why I decided to start my business here.
So was it tough? I mean, you obviously had hooks into the LA County, the surrounding county, San Bernardino, I imagine, and those places there. And obviously the local city government, that was your ecosystem for 10 years. How did you translate that? I mean, you didn't know anybody out here. I mean, you knew somebody, I'm sure, but you didn't
Well,
have nearly that kind of reach.
no, I didn't. And the funny thing, though, I will start my answer with this, is that when I used to travel to conferences, U.S. Conference of Mayors, National League of Cities, whatever, for some reason, even before I knew I would move here, I always hung out with the Arizona delegation. I just got along with them. I don't know why. I just had a lot of friends in Arizona, and that wasn't by in design. It was just random. So when I moved here, I kind of had a semi-small base of people I knew. It really didn't go beyond that. So when I moved here, it wasn't completely foreign, but on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, it was maybe like a 3 of people I knew. So to your question, I took a chance and I said, you know what, I want to move to a state and an area that I think I can probably do some good in. And I'm just going to roll the dice and go at it. And that's what I did. But right away, I found that the politics were different, extremely different, 180-degree difference in Southern California.
Yes, I keep getting told that all the time by people on Facebook. So yes.
And just the way things work here is different. You know, the structure, the things take longer. I mean, it's just a whole different way of doing things. So I had to learn a new system, is my point. I had to learn a new set of rules. And it took about 3 years, frankly, to learn all that. And I'm still learning. Sure. But it's, it sounds funny what I'm going to say, but it's almost, there's this element of like the Wild West out here. Coming from my experience in Southern California and California. Here, there is an element of the Wild West, and you have to be able to fend for yourself here a lot more. There's less of a support system if you're a Democrat here. Much less. I mean, that's obvious.
Yes. That really needs to be repeated because it sounds cliche. It sounds, just like somebody would write it in a script, but it really is true. Arizona is a different place.
It is.
And the rules are different. If there are rules.
There are no rules, in my opinion, compared to what I'm used to. And it doesn't make it, I'm not saying it as a negative thing. I'm saying it as a reality from my experience.
And totally get that. Yeah.
Think about it like this. A lot of the people that have succeeded in politics here in Arizona come from outside.
Oh, you mean like John McCain?
Well, right. I mean, they have just figured out that there are no rules here. So I'm going to take a semi-structure of what I'm used to in Illinois or California and adapt it here and make it work. Yeah. And that's what I've learned, is that it's a bit of that. The other thing I've learned here in Arizona is that if you're, depending on which party you belong to, if you want to run for office here as a Democrat, in California, there's a very structured, you work your way up, you talk to the right people, you get permission, and you do your thing. It's much more of a party, hierarchy. Here, sometimes you have two Democrats running against each other in a seat that's Democrat. Like, that's unheard of in California. You just don't do that. Here, it's a lot more kind of, you just take your shot and see what happens.
It surprised me. I was recruited by the Democrats. I wasn't even a Democrat. I was an independent, and very happily, being an independent. And I was recruited by a friend of mine who I'd been in Afghanistan with to run for the legislative seat. And first off, I thought there's no way that any Democrat's going to win that seat, and I was right. But once I got over, well, let's give this a try. This might be a really interesting experience, and it was. Yeah, there was no permission. There was no. People think that a lot of people think in a lot of places that you got to work your way up. They select you. No, it was. Yeah. You want to do it? Sure. If you can get the funding, go for it, man. If you can get the signatures, let us know if we can help you. That was it.
Mount your horse and ride into town. Go for it, right? I mean, that's exactly it's something I had to get used to. It's not any better. It's not any worse. It just is what it is. It's how
it just is.
That's how it's set up here. Yeah.
What I've got an opinion on this, and I've said it in other venues. I don't know if I've said it here in this show, but let me hear your thoughts on term limits in the legislature.
Oh man, yeah, term limits. Here we go. So I may have an unusual take on this. I am not a big believer in term limits. I've never been, and my argument, and I know that might stray from, not, for example, in Congress, right? The reason why I'm not a big believer in term limits is that there is a such thing as institutional knowledge, assuming the right person is in office. Now, that's obviously the con to all of the term limits. You might get the wrong person in there forever. But my take on it is that, I would much rather have the election take care of somebody that is in there that is not quote unquote good for the system or whatever. In other words, simply put, if you cannot beat a person that you think is wrong for office through the elective process, you don't need a term limit, because you got to be able to, garner your votes and gather your people and turn your people out to get rid of somebody. I just think that fundamentally, a term limit is an artificial rule for trying to solve a problem about a person you think is wrong for office. Just vote them out next time. That's kind of my take on it. And I know that's not traditional take, but it is mine.
Well, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
In fact, when people bring up term limits, I say, you want to see term limits? Check out Arizona.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that tells you all you need to know about how wrong they are, because no institution of knowledge, the same. Right. The way I saw it, what struck me as a civilian before I even got into politics was, and I was kind of ambivalent to term limits. Maybe they would be a good thing. I didn't know. And we're talking 2010.
Correct.
But when I started paying attention, what I saw was that every 4 to 6 years, some yahoo would get elected and come up with some whack ass idea,
right? And
that had been done 4 to 6 years before, and nobody was there to say no. And all these people had to do in the 6 or 8 years they had in office was to get famous.
That's right.
And interview basically a 6 to 8 year interview for their next gig, or 4 years. I don't remember what the term limits are anymore.
That is correct. That is correct. And
and then off they go, at leaving a pile of or a trail of waste and destruction behind them.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. And my fundamental argument is that, similar to what you were just saying, is that essentially the system was designed such that the election should take care of somebody that the people don't want. Now,
yeah,
it's up to the people that are behind a candidate or whatever to get someone out or recall or whatever. But I just don't agree with term limits. I don't think that's the right way to solve problems, to limit somebody, because the flip side, what if you get someone really good? I mean, the California state legislature has term limits. And luckily in California, there's a good group of people with so much political talent and government talent that you don't really run into many problems, but occasionally you do. And, you look at people that have been termed out of office and you just wish that they would have stayed in longer. One personal quick story, one of the people that I really have looked up to my entire life, he was a senator in California, Dr. Ed Hernandez. He was a California state senator, but a chiropractor as well. And he got into the state legislature at a relatively young age, and he was very educated. He's still around. I don't talk about him like he's dead, but I mean, he got termed out, and he just went back to private practice. Not that that's bad, but the institutional knowledge, the talent, I mean, the genuine concern for people was lost. And of course, he was replaced by someone that was very good. But people like that, I don't think should be termed out artificially. I think, that they should be allowed to stay as long as the people want them to. So
imagine the loss. Imagine a loss to America and I'm just going to pick the most obvious one in my mind. If Joe Biden had been termed out in 1990.
That's a great example. Right.
You don't have to agree with him, but the guy knew how to make government work.
That's right. I mean, exactly. I mean, there's a reason why on the local level we don't have term limits. I mean, most cities, smaller cities, the city I came from, didn't have term limits. You can stay for as long as you are doing a decent job.
As long as people will elect you.
That's correct. As long as the people will elect you. And so term limits to me is a dicey topic. I know it's an easy argument to make, right? Kick the bums out. I mean, but when you really dig deep into it, I don't think term limits makes our government any better.
Hang on a second. Ed is calling me.
Oh, well, there we go.
You're on speakerphone and live on the show. What's up? I emailed it to you. I don't know what to tell you. Again? Okay, you realize to do that, I've got to probably get out of the show. Stan, I tell you what, let me try, but check your spam filter, okay? All right, I'll email it again if I can.
I forwarded
sometimes, yeah, you probably can. Yeah, why don't you do that? Okay, cool.
I just forwarded it. Yeah.
Ed, it's coming at you. If not, I don't know what to tell you. You get what you pay for.
I have two screens
I'm not getting a salary here.
I just forwarded him. So, yeah.
All right.
There we go.
So back to what you do. Primarily, you're a lobbyist. Are you the legislators that you provide access to, and I suppose other politicians as well? Are they primarily Democrat? Are they primarily Republican? Or is it really across the board?
No, it's across the board. We provide, so the work we do, to get into some details, we provide access to issues, access to government officials, elected officials, federal, state, and local level. And we've I'll give you an example of how interesting my job is that, one day, 9 a.m., I can be in Southern California, at a client's office who is predominantly Democrat, dealing with the rent control issue. That same evening, I can fly back to Arizona and head up to Prescott, Arizona, and deal with our client up in Prescott, who's predominantly Republican, dealing with the same rent control issue. And
because some things really don't belong to a party.
They do not. They just deal with them differently. But and to your question, we deal with Republicans, Democrats, Green, Libertarian. You just don't know what you're going to get. And I think, the thing that has kept us successful is that we don't advocate for, like social issues. That's just not what the firm does. But when it comes to business, a Democrat and a Republican, all want to make money. They just approach it very differently. And we have learned to, deal with different people from all walks of life and parties in different ways. It's a very, I learned something one time. I asked well, you probably know the name, Willie Brown. And I asked, I had a chance to meet him one time.
Famously famous recently. Yes.
Recently, very fair. And it's a funny story because I remember I was a young, 22, 23-year-old, recently elected mayor. I walked into an event that he happened to be at, California League of Cities or something. And I took my opportunity to ask him a question. I went up to him, and he was sitting at a table. It was like his reserved booth or something. I don't know. And I asked him, I said, what's the number one, piece of advice that you can give me? I'm in the city council and politics and all that. And he gets up and he walks towards like the restaurant bar area. And I thought it was weird because he was like ignoring me, I thought. And he looks back and he says, I'll be right back. And he comes back with a bottle of wine and a few glasses, and he puts it on the table. And I looked at him, like maybe he misunderstood me, or what's he doing? And he said, "Sit down, son. This is going to take a while." I swear to God, I will never forget this in my life. And he sits there and he basically just walks me through, experiences and stories. And essentially the best piece of advice he said, it was kind of a two-part thing. He said, learn how to count to 3, because I was on a council of 5 people. He said, if you don't have, essentially the lesson was, if you don't have the votes, it doesn't matter what you believe. You can't push an agenda. So count your votes. And 3,
yep.
Yeah. And the second thing he said was almost even equally impactful. He said, never go into a meeting or never go into a situation in which you do not know the outcome. And I remember asking, well, how do you know that? He says, if you're good, you'll know. And
if you know how to count 3, it helps.
Right, exactly. Know your audience, know the rules, count your votes before you go in. Never go into an open vote. Like I knew, I didn't know at the time what he meant, but after all these years in politics, now I get it. He was just super intelligent in that way, and I learned that you don't. It's a baseball analogy. You don't have to be the hardest thrower, the fastest runner. as a pitcher, for example, you just have to know how to outpitch the hitter. You don't have to throw hard. You just have to know how to locate your pitches. That's essentially what he was saying. So
holy cow, we now have Ed on board. Look at
hey,
that.
Ed, how you doing?
Yeah, it's like it's been a long day, so
that's okay.
Relax. I've got some more questions for Louie, but jump on in whenever you feel. So
well, you go ahead. I've got something I want to talk about, but I want to hear what Louie's got to say first. So
okay, so the question, and this will be my last one because I'm going to turn it over to Ed because he's got something he wants to talk about. But how do you mentioned something earlier, and that is that you don't handle social issues, and then you intimated that really what you do, your firm, you focus on business and business related issues, that sort of thing. How do you keep abreast of policy trends, all of that? What is your study profile look like?
I have a very disciplined routine every morning. That's the simple answer. Luckily I have a great staff. They provide me with a daily, what we call a media briefing. And a media briefing is exactly what it is, what it sounds like. It's a briefing of everything going on, federal, state, and local in the states that we focus in, and just a general across the board U.S. briefing. And my routine, I never break it every morning. I wake up pretty much at the same time every day, except if I'm traveling. Read the briefing, have my coffee, whatever, and then I allow about an hour to absorb it, and then just get into work. The ultimate point that I'm making, though, is I have a very structured routine that I don't break every morning in order to stay on top of what's going on.
Yeah, I totally get that. I don't do what you do. I've got a completely different shtick. But yeah, it starts out with me reading my sources, and I've got I curate them and then decide what I want to present during the day and go from there. So I could and if you break it, I mean, it is hard to get back on that horse, isn't it?
Oh my God. Yeah. It's like saying if you're playing a sport and you take a month off, I mean, good luck getting back in without having your muscles sore. I mean, it's no, but luckily I have a great staff. I mean, they do a lot of this work for me and they keep me informed. So,
well, I have a great staff too. It's me.
For a while it was me, but luckily you grow. But that's how I do it. It comes down to just being disciplined. I mean, that's what it is.
Well, Ed, I'm going to shut up and sit here and smile and laugh. So your turn now.
Hey, welcome everybody. I've been busy trying to get home. Actually, I had my own medical appointment today, and I was over in the nether reaches of Eastern Scottsdale. And, it just so happens that, I didn't really have to pay attention to any traffic laws coming back. So once I got on the 101, I was doing 85, 90. And the reason that is because the chances of me getting caught were slim to none. And that seems to be a fact of life for a lot of America these days, that there really is nobody that's, enforcing the rules anymore. And the person that's I blame more than anybody for this is Donald Trump, because he has been spending the last 8 years denigrating law enforcement, denigrating the norms of laws and rules, so that now you can proceed with little chance of fallout or going to jail. It's like one of the things that Donald did was to basically create a war between the Department of Justice, the DOJ, and the FBI, and made it so that people that work there were in deadly fear of losing their jobs. And in fact, he did what every autocrat does. You find somebody that you need to sacrifice. In this case, it was Andrew McCabe. Found a pretext to fire him. And once he fired him, he revoked his pension. Now, if you're an employee, especially in government service, and you have something like that happen, that's going to attract your attention. And it's going to make you very reluctant to stand up in his way. And in fact, recently, Donald Trump has been out there saying that and he's being very open about this, he intends to weaponize the Department of Justice and the FBI to go after political opponents. And he has, on video, has said that one of the first people that he's going to have his DOJ charge, arrest, and put in prison is Mark Zuckerberg, because he has decided that in the 2020 election, Mark Zuckerberg interfered with the election, and that's going to have consequences for him. And so, again, this is on videotape, so you can go Google it and find it, that he is going to put Mark Zuckerberg in prison for life. Now, Mark Zuckerberg can appeal, but the only place he can appeal to is the Supreme Court of the United States. And, well, how do you think that's going to go? I think that pretty much Mark's going to be in prison for the rest of his life if Donald gets reelected. You know, the whole thing is that when you go back and look at it, I mean, Donald's been saying deep state, you know, that there's these cabals of employees in the Department of Justice and the FBI that have been working against, you know, the people like Trump, who are the true Americans and patriots. And when, you know, they've investigated internally, they have found nothing. What they did find, though, is that in 2016, the FBI office in New Jersey was firmly in Trump's corner. And guess where the Hillary emails came out of? That office in New Jersey. So, you know, a week before the election, you know, they get the Hillary emails, you know, we're going to have to investigate further. And as far as I'm concerned, that was election interference. That did change the election.
So Trump has said also in the past 48 hours or so that election interference is okay. That, you know, that you're allowed
Absolutely.
to do that. When in fact there are multiple laws, federal, state, and local, that say you can't.
Now, here's one of the other things that I think few people have actually given a lot of thought to. I mean, they're not, especially if you're coming from the left, particularly happy about it, is the power of the pardon. And what it was originally set up, you know, there was an initial fight because we were trying to get away from kings, and you know, nobody was supposed to be above the law, but they decided that one of the powers that would be king-like was the ability of our top executive to grant pardons. But then nobody saw that it would be abused for political purposes and used to punish the weak and protect your political allies. And that's what Trump is. And not just Trump. I mean, when you go back, I mean, even going back through Clinton, you get to the end of their terms. And, you know, pretty much since then, there's this rush of pardons that get handed out literally in the last 14 days of the administrations. And a lot of them have been politically connected. And frankly, it's been done by both sides for, you know, pretty much the last 30 years. But Trump has
longer than that, far longer than that.
Yeah, longer than that. But I mean, it's like you know, we have, you know, the internet around to track it. You know, it's. But you know, Trump has vowed to use that as a way to bring in, and you know, he's already said he's going to get rid of 350,000 government employees, replace them with at-will political appointees, and then have them do his bidding, with the idea that if he asks them to go send SEAL Team 6 in to kill somebody, they're going to get a pardon from him. So don't worry about it. No sweat. And so Trump is already looking at not only weaponizing the Department of Justice and the FBI, but he's going to truly weaponize the power of the pardon to basically do away with democracy. And so anyway, you know,
well, you certainly had stuff you wanted to say.
Yeah. I mean, you know,
were you rehearsing this soliloquy on your way back across Phoenix?
Yeah, at 90 miles an hour on the 101 coming back, and 51.
But you know, sadly, we're running up against the time, and I do definitely want to give Louie the last say here. But yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, we're facing the end of democracy here potentially in America. That is. And
so anyway,
that's why I'm learning French.
You've got plenty of reasons to pick out, you know, why you want to vote. And, you know, and at this point, this is if we're going to get out the reason not to pick one team, you know, this is the time I want to get it, because one of the things that I'm starting to see is that now we're getting into the season where the minimally engaged voters are starting to engage. And so this is the time to get out, to get the message out that yes, there are dangers with one side, but there's also plenty of pluses with the other. And so, there's going to be more than enough reason to vote for one team. And this time I'm backing Kamala Harris and every progressive Democratic candidate that I can find. And frankly, if the Republicans, want to have any chance to save their party, they need to burn the Trump party to the ground. Anyway, that's what I've got to say for this week.
So, Louie, you're the guy on the ground talking to both sides, and granted, not about some of these issues, and usually more focused on certainly the state and the local. But are you seeing? I mean, Arizona is this weird place where we did have some of the very first Republicans say no. We did have some of the first ones walk away, starting with John McCain. What are you seeing now? Where is the body politic when it comes to Arizona Republicans?
Well, from my ears to the ground and what I'm hearing and, what I see out there and just, from the people that are in on both sides, because I have the opportunity, if you want to call it that, to mix in with both Democrats and Republicans. And I think the biggest difference right now is on the Republican side, they're really focusing on registrations. They are outpacing the Democratic registrations by quite a bit. So in terms of new voter registrations, Republicans have the advantage. That's a very simple analysis. However, the energy is on the Democratic side, though, because in elected office, and I experienced this firsthand every time I ran, you basically have two choices when you run in terms of who you reach out to get out there to vote. You can say, well, we have X number of people, and of those X number, we have a certain percent that are not registered. So we're going to register them, and then we're going to educate them on how to vote and then push them out to vote. Or that's choice A, which is a lot of energy and resources. Or choice B is you say, well, of all the people that currently vote, there's about a 20% that are high propensity, always vote, people that vote all the time. I'm going to focus all my energy and resources on that 20% because they're guaranteed to vote. I'm going to convince them because I know they're going to vote. So as a candidate, you look at that and you say, well, I have two choices, right? Do I try to widen the net and try to get more people out, and I'm going to spend more money and do it and more resources and energy? Or do you, focus on people that vote all the time? My point is that I think in this case, the Democrats have to do both. And it is harder in Arizona because the Republicans have the advantage of not only the registrations right now, but of a very solid core group that will always vote red no matter what. The Democrats have the job.
I was surprised how true that is, but yes.
And the Republicans.
The thing is, Louie, it's like that's surprising because do the Republicans even have a national office open here in Arizona?
Well,
I didn't think so. So it's like when you're comparing ground games, that really surprises me.
Well, I don't think they have to. Is kind of my argument. I think that they have there's people that I've met that all what I consider logical arguments. It doesn't matter. Right?
No, it doesn't.
It's frustrating because like everything Ed said was absolutely I agree with and good points. We just have to fight as Democrats 3 different fronts this time: new voters, high propensities, and traditional Republicans that we can convince. Because the Democrats will always vote with us because we're Democrat, but there's 3 other groups that. Whereas the Republicans are just going to go after their own, and they're already there.
Well, here's the thing is, Louie, it's like Mike and I are both apostate ex-Republicans,
True.
A long way back. And frankly, I'm running into quite a few people that, are, what I call the hangers on that, still harbor this fantasy. They're going to salvage the old style Republicans. And it's like, they're saying I can't vote for Trump.
I was talking to someone but the other day actually about that where I live in Moon Valley. The same thing. They said, I can't vote for Trump. I just can't do this. I'm a Republican, but I'm just not going to vote.
Well, that's fine. I don't care.
Right. That's what I told them. I said, well, hey, stay home.
That's actually very helpful.
Right. Right. Exactly. And I think to the original question, I think we have a big opportunity here as Democrats to bring a lot of people that are in that kind of camp that, don't want to vote or whatever, to bring them on board. It's a lot of work to do that. And I see the ground game here in Arizona. I see it taking shape. I will say that I think going from, say 5 or 6 points of the Republican lead to pretty much virtually tied here is a huge, I mean, that's a momentous shift in the matter of a month. I mean, that's incredible. Do I think we can win Arizona? I do. I actually really do. I just think it's going to be closer than people think.
I listen. I agree with what you say. I don't live in Arizona anymore, but I certainly have a lot of friends. A lot of my readers are in Arizona, so I still feel the vibrations coming from the state.
Yeah.
And that's what I see. What was it? 3-4 months ago, Ruben Gallego was not, doing very well against Kerry Lake, and then suddenly he's broken out, and then suddenly.
I once had a guy. I remember this very vividly to talk about, like, to Ed's point about the, how voters are. I once had a guy when I was knocking on his door. He had a sign of my opponent, and I went to his door anyway, and I knocked on his door when I was running for re-election as a mayor. We conversed, and he basically wasn't going to be convinced, right? Anyway, I turned back around, and I start walking out through his gate, like a chain link fence. His dog runs around from the backyard, jumps on me and pets me, and I'm petting the dog, and I'm walking away, and he says, "Mr. Lujon, come here." He goes, "My dog likes you. I'm going to vote for you." And it hit me at that moment. No, and it sounds ridiculous and funny, but it hit me at that moment that voters are so like emotional. They trust you, and it could be spur of the moment. It could be any reason why they go to the polls one day and they switch their minds in the box.
It really is, and I got a piece of advice back in 2016. I was disgusted by Trump from the get-go, for a number of reasons, all of which are valid. Right. and I started saying stuff about it. And one of the party operatives came up and said, "Look, you run your race, because there are going to be people who will vote for you and Trump on the same ticket. And that's just the way it is."
It is.
So you worry about you. You let everybody else worry about their races. And I had reason to actually use that again with one of our local candidates here just in the last month and say, yes, I know you want to support Kamala. Got it. That's great. Shut up.
That's why I always tell people when you're running for office, because they always ask me advice, I say, you know what, endorsements don't matter. People will.
No, they don't.
Gotta go and do your thing. Don't worry about who's supporting you, and this guy supports me, and it doesn't matter. The signs.
I remember having conversations with the local Sierra Vista newspaper editor, and I did everything right, and I did get the endorsement, and that the only person that made happy was me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, right. Nobody votes for you because so-and-so is voting for you, unless it's your mom or dad, maybe. But, even then, I mean, it's just really about you making a human connection with another human being at the very core fundamental level of voting. It's very psychological. And I just learned that over the years of being in office. I remember first running, I had my platform and my speech, but at the end of the day, I like that guy.
It's sort of exactly.
Sort of like Tim Walz is doing.
Bingo. Exactly. That's why when Kamala chose him, I was actually, in the back of my mind, I thought he might be chosen for that reason. Like, she knows politics, she gets it. So she knows the political element here.
Oh, I mean, who can't relate to a coach running
that's right,
a lunchroom and trying to keep order among a bunch of 15-year-olds?
I mean, exactly. There's just something so relatable about that. And then you got the other guy on the other side, like, having awkward moments at donut shops. And I mean, he's I hate to say the phrase because everybody's using it, but it's weird, man. He's a strange human being.
When Wall said that, it just encapsulated everything that people thought for years. Right. And it's like, now I got a word for it. No kidding.
I'll tell you, I think J.D. Vance has been so damaged. I don't even think he's going to re-win.
I don't think so.
Campaign coming back up, because it's like you look at him and why would you take this autistic robot and put him
right? I mean, he is just a strange human being. There's no other way. Awkward and can't relate to people, and it's like that kid in high school that just something was off about him, and it's just sometimes they become good people and other times they just stay weird. And I think he's one of those.
I'm not big into calling people names because it's just childish, and of course with my chosen name here, it's clearly a target. But I do love the fact that people started calling him Hillbilly Vanilli. Yeah, of course, you got to be our age to think that's funny, but
right. It's a whole different generation. No, it's true though.
Yeah.
It's like the whole couch thing too. It's like everybody goes, no. It's like it's not true, but it's like it could be.
Right, exactly. That's a great point. I mean, sometimes you just look at people and you're just thinking in your head like, what's wrong with that person? It's always like that weird neighbor you got. There's something off. That's who he is. I mean, that's how I see him.
Yes, that is who he is. When I was running back in 2016, what is her name? The head of the Arizona Republican Party. What's her crazy ass name? Dr. Kelly.
Kelly Ward.
Kelly Ward.
I don't know, but I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Well, I appeared on the stage with her in multiple places in Southeast Arizona. And she was just, she had that look in her eye like she was just crazy, like
kind of lizard looking or whatever.
Yeah, it was very strange. And so I wasn't surprised that she got defeated. I was surprised that Republicans hung on to her and promoted her to the head of the party.
Right. And, here's the thing, right? Like, we laugh about it and we have a good time with it. And but there are people out there that don't think that's weird. And there's a lot of them.
I know.
And a lot of them in Arizona. And it's something that I think is sometimes as Democrats, we underestimate. The other side actually doesn't think it's weird. And that sometimes we blow it off like, no one's they can vote for that guy. We live in our own bubble, right? But I deal with these people every day. And some of them are actually my good friends. And they tell me with serious faces, I believe in this guy. I think he has the right ideas. He's a good person. And I'm thinking in my head, is this the same guy that I'm thinking? We live in two different parallel worlds, it seems sometimes.
I don't envy you having to deal with that. Yeah.
What's that?
I said I don't envy you having to deal with that because it's like you got to change gears.
I'm going to tell you like a quick, real, true story. When I first came to Arizona, we I don't want to say client names because it's but we picked up a client in Prescott, Arizona, and Prescott, as you know, is fairly conservative. And I shared this story with Ed a while back, but I'll share it quickly with you. So I go to the client's office and I meet with the executive team that we're going to be doing business with. And one of the members of the executive team, sweet lady, I love her to death, pulls me aside and informs me that she's the very involved in the Prescott area Republican Party. Okay, good for you kind of a thing. I remember thinking like, where is she going with this? I'm thinking maybe she's just talking to me, whatever. And this was back when Trump was first running. She hands me a flyer. And I can't make this up. The flyer said, "Armed Women for Trump," with her picture on it, with a bullet belt and a semi-automatic weapon, not photoshopped, and said, "I look forward to seeing you at the next rally." But she was not joking. This was a serious invitation. And in all these thoughts crossed my head. The first thought was, wait a minute, what vibe am I giving off? Does she think...
Oh, you're a good.
There's no way she can get this from me. Like the second vibe was she's not joking. Like, and it hit me again. Like, this is another little life lesson I learned. There are people that don't think that is weird in any way, shape, or form to be on a flyer with a semi-automatic "Armed Women for Trump" bullet belt. That's their world.
Yeah.
And she's involved in the Republican Party up there. So I joke around about these things and they're weird and all that, but I don't underestimate them because those people exist.
Imagine me driving in one day across my district at the time from East Tucson to Safford and Sierra Vista and Wilcox in between. That's good God, the disparity of thought process in there. It was wild. I learned a lot.
On one hand, are we good with time? I don't want to,
We don't really have a time, but we do need to wrap it up. This is now our longest episode.
Tell you what, Louie, we're going so good. Why don't you come back again?
I will. I'd love to
Yes.
come back. And I'll tell you the next time I come back, I'll share with you the story of my father was a Vietnam veteran, and he tells a story of when he lands at LAX airport from Vietnam, fresh off the battlefield. This old woman spit in his face, and his response to that story changed my life forever, because I never thought he would respond like that. But I'll share that for another time, or save it for another time. But it goes back into this, that we complain and we joke and all that, but imagine having this kind of a conversation in China, or just the fact that we're able to look at our differences and laugh sometimes is we have to take a deep breath and realize we're very fortunate.
Well, I hope we can have this conversation again in 4 years, but I'd like to have another conversation with you and a lot sooner than that.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I'll share that story about my father and his return. It's you wouldn't expect the ending to it, so I'll save it, but yeah.
Ooh,
I'll leave that to coordinate with you on when and how, but
sure.
We'd love to have you back. It's been a pleasure. And I think you bring a lot of experience that people don't normally see. And that's exactly what I'd like to get our viewers, our readers to understand, is that this thing we call politics is a big animal.
Huge,
very diverse.
Yeah. And it's constantly changing every day. I mean, and then with the 24-hour news cycle nowadays and social media, I mean, I don't honestly know how some of these people run for office and stay sane nowadays.
No, that's
AI,
why I'm not doing it again. That's why I'm not doing it again. All right. Well, listen, guys, thanks a lot. Ed, hopefully we can get you back in without having medical intervention in between.
There you go.
I hope so too.
Yeah. And don't drive 90, man. Be safe,
Yeah, seriously.
Everybody else was going pretty much the same speed.
That is true.
I wasn't passing hardly anybody. Just FYI. So.
I hear you.
Well, we will be back the same time next week. Louie, you're always welcome, and I sincerely hope we get to see you again. And until then, keep your powder dry. I hope you keep both sides of the aisle happy with you.
I have to, man. Harry, thank you. Ed,
yeah,
thank you
do.
very much. Pleasure.
Okay.
Adios, guys.
Okay, bye-bye.